Introduction. Types of learning disability. Learning disability is a broad term that indicates limitations with reading, writing, comprehending, recalling, inferring, and so on. Specifically, it includes the following conditions. Dyslexia. It is also called reading disorder. The person is unable to read and write as the brain is unable to correctly process the written word from the eyes to the brain. Dysgraphia. There is deficiency and impairment in handwriting and written expression. The child has problem in writing correct grammatical sentences, putting right punctuation marks, poor paragraph structure, and spellings. Dyscalculia. It indicates impairment in mathematical skills. The individual faces problem in perceptual skills. Example, grouping objects. Attention-based skills. Example, remembering to add, carry over number. And mathematical skills. Example, following the correct sequence to arrive at the correct solution. Dysphasia. Individuals have difficulty in learning both receptive and expressive oral language. Dysnomia. Individuals have severe problems in recalling names, symbols, and vocabulary. Dyspraxia. Individuals have trouble in planning and executing tasks involving fine motor skills. Dysorthographia. Individuals have spelling difficulty. Now we briefly describe about dyslexia. Dyslexia is one of several distinct learning disabilities. It is a specific language-based disorder. It's of biological origin, usually genetic. Characteristic symptoms are difficulties in single word decoding, reading, usually reflecting insufficient phonological skills. Dyslexia is manifested by varying difficulty with different forms of language, often including, in addition to problems with reading, a conspicuous problem with acquiring proficiency in writing and spelling. These difficulties are often unexpected in relation to age and other intellectual and academic abilities. In some school subjects, these difficulties are not the result of a generalized developmental disability. These children have a normal IQ or sensory impairment. They don't have seeing, hearing problems. Some dyslexic people have very good space orientation, visual or auditory memory, technical skills. Visual and auditory processing are the processes of recognizing and interpreting information taken in through the senses of sight and sound. The terms visual and auditory processing and visual and auditory perceptions are often used interchangeably. Although there are many types of perception, the two most common areas of difficulty involved with a learning disability are visual and auditory perception. Since so much information in the classroom and at home is presented visually and or verbally, the child with an auditory or visual perceptual disorder can be at a disadvantage in certain situations. The following information describes these two types of disorders, their educational implications, some basic interventions, and what to do if there is a suspected problem. Dyslexia. Dyslexia is a condition that affects the ability to process language. Dyslexic learners often have difficulties in the acquisition of literacy skills, and in some cases, problems may manifest themselves in mathematics. It is not surprising that those who have difficulties in deciphering written words should also have difficulty in learning the sets of facts, notation, and symbols that are used in mathematics. This pattern of abilities and weaknesses is known as specific learning difficulties. Problems often occur with the language of mathematics, sequencing, orientation and memory rather than with the mathematics itself. Dyslexic learners find it difficult to produce mental or written answers quickly and need to learn by heart. For pupils who have poor memory systems may well result in failure and lack of self-belief. Some dyslexic learners will enjoy the flexibility of approach and methods, while for others, choice creates uncertainty, confusion, and anxiety. Dyslexic learners often have significant reading difficulties. Reading unusual words, including mathematical vocabulary, is often problematic. Better progress is often made if a significant proportion of the work can be represented as simple images or put in a real context. Mathematical vocabulary should be pre-thought. Encourage learners to refer to difficult names and places by initial letters. These difficulties need to be overcome before dyslexic learners can attempt to decide between choices of mathematical operations to solve a problem. May need more clues to recognize, develop, and predict patterns to help them solve problems. Word problems are likely to be a source of difficulty. Teach the use of a problem-solving frame. Read the problem. Identify the key information and write it down or draw pictures. Decide which calculation is necessary. Use an appropriate calculation method, mental, written, or calculator. Interpret the answer in the context of the problem. Pupils may learn how questions are constructed if they invent their own word problems. The use of materials or images to interpret word problems can increase success. May have difficulties in understanding and retaining the meaning of abstract mathematical vocabulary. Words such as difference, multiply, and divide are often confusing. Abstract terminology should only be used once the relevant conceptual understandings are already in place. In building understanding, it is best if appropriate informal or colloquial translations are used alongside the formal vocabulary. May have difficulty deciding which operations to use to solve a word problem even though they are gifted, intuitive problem solvers. Some learners require further conceptual work to consolidate their understanding of difference, multiplication, or division. Using concrete materials at all ages may help. Drawing diagrams may provide useful support in understanding a problem. May visualize and solve certain word problems without reverting to formal operations. This is common in problems involving difference and division. Both problem forms may be visualized as missing number questions, but learners may require help in setting up the appropriate number sentence. Asking learners how a calculator would represent the relevant calculation can be helpful. Dyslexic learners should not be discouraged from using their own special strategies. Some problems are less dependent on number facts, and dyslexic learners may have more opportunity to succeed. Even though language and sequencing may present difficulties, may be unsettled by the insecurity of estimation. Estimation requires risk-taking, and insecure learners avoid risk. Visual models may help pupils see closeness, measures, shape, and space. The language of time is potentially confusing with deceptively simple changes such as saying 7:10 has 10 past 7, reverse order, creating problems. Using a clock face with pupils moving the hands and specifically relating to the language to the image may help. The introduction of digital representation may be supported in the first instance by a set of personal sequencing cards. May confuse left and right, hindering work on position, direction and movement. Left and right are difficult to anchor to a fixed image. Learners need to spend time involved in physical activities using direction cards and possibly learning a simple mnemonic to help remember left and right. Example, write with my right hand and the one that is left is my left. Clockwise and anti-clockwise may present similar problems, although they can be anchored to a visual image. ICT equipment, including the use of programmable toys, may help. May have problems with the range of vocabulary related to measures, shape and space. Similar sounding words such as triangle and rectangle, cube and cuboid may cause confusion both in understanding and learning the properties of these shapes. Spelling may also pose a difficulty. 3D and 2D shapes and drawings need to be used to ensure overlearning takes place. Difficulties with spatial imagery can cause confusion when children are presented with 2D representations of 3D shapes. May have difficulties reading graphs. The point on a grid and the x and y axis can be confused. A simple mnemonic along the corridor and up the stairs may help. The introduction of negative coordinates often causes disproportionate difficulty because of the change of direction. May find drawing shapes challenging. Support such as joining dots or modeling in plastic adds a multi-sensory approach. Handling data dyslexic learners, reading scales and two-way tables. Example, mileage timetables, etc. can be difficult. Clearly labeled diagrams may be interpreted more easily if different colors are used to represent the data recorded. May have problems understanding the different types of averages. The teaching and use of the terms mode, median and mean is difficult as they all begin with the same letter. When teaching, it might be useful to use separate color index cards with the words and their meanings written on. Example, mode, most frequent, median, middle, mean, average, range, biggest minus smallest. Visual processing disorder. Visual processing disorder has nothing to do with eyesight or vision. It has to do with the brain not processing the information which the eye takes in. Children with visual processing disorder have difficulties learning visual information due to the deficits in the visual control system in their brains. Children with visual processing disorder struggle in these three areas: in reading and writing, visual word memory problems. Children with visual processing disorder will often show abnormal behaviors during reading, such as frequent word or line skips, tendency to move their whole head to read instead of just their eyes, difficulties with automatic sight word recognition, double vision squinting or closing or rubbing one eye, complaints of visual blurring or letters moving around, popping in and out of the paper. The letters in words are not in sequence. Letter and symbol reversal problems. it is common for children under the age of 7 to reverse letters or numbers when writing or to make letter substitutions when reading. Children with visual processing disorder will make reversals and substitutions beyond the age of 7. These children will also show problems with a letter formation that extends far beyond simple difficulties with reversals. Contrast sensitivity problem. Children with visual processing disorder often have difficulties with poor visual contrast sensitivity. These children may experience glare from the paper, eye strain, difficulties making out the letters. Symptoms may be worse in some lights than others. Fluorescent lights frequently produce the most problems, recognizing and addressing what's wrong. Visual processing disorder is when the brain has difficulty interpreting the images a person sees. It is often a significant factor in dyslexia, as the person with this diagnosis will have trouble focusing on visual images, recognizing letters, and visual tracking. Some of the other signs of visual processing disorders are asking for verbal direction despite the presence of clear written directions, missing visual details or the overall concept in a picture, confusion or agitation working with material that is too stimulating, problems reading and spelling words that are not phonetic, frequently losing their place when reading, recognizing the important information in assignments and tests. Since a vast majority of schoolwork centers around a person's aptitude for correctly processing visual images, this disorder can be extremely challenging for the student. There are things that can be done in the class and at home to strengthen weakness with visual processing. Strategies for success. Strategies to help the student with visual processing disorder function in the classroom can include providing writing paper with darker lines, giving assignments that have been broken down into small steps rather than presenting them with a large project, having them use a ruler as a reading guide, and allowing them to use a tape recorder during lectures. If you allow them to use a highlighter, be sure you tell them that information is important enough to highlight. These modifications are necessary to help the student compensate for his disability, but there are also activities that can strengthen these areas of weakness. These activities can be done in the classroom as well as at home. Activities should use as many of the multiple intelligence as possible. This will help ensure the student with a disability will have a better chance of understanding the lesson, and it will reinforce the lesson for the other students in the class. Hands-on activities that use multiple senses are very effective. Games that ask students to describe how two pictures are different help build visual discrimination. Matching shapes is also a very good way to strengthen visual discrimination. Both of these games can increase in difficulty as ability increases. There are many fun games that can be played to address visual memory. Pair students and give them an allotted time to study their partner. When time is up, have one student turn her back while the other student changes something about the appearance. Is the change noticed? The same idea can be used by lining up a set of objects. Allow the student time to study the objects before you put them back in a box. Have the student either describe the order of the objects or line them up in the correct order themselves. One more game to increase visual memory is the one we have all played, in which we lay cards face down and try to match them up. Visual processing strategies. Effective visual processing categories are classroom modifications dictated by the specific needs of the child. No two children share the same set of strengths or areas of weakness, so no two children will benefit from the same strategy. An effective intervention is one that utilizes a child's strength in order to build on the specific areas in need of development. Visual processing strategy needs to be tried and evaluated, and new techniques tried until by trial and error you find what works. The design of strategies and intervention is a dynamic and ever-changing process. Although this may sound overwhelming initially, it is important to remember that the process of finding successful intervention becomes easier with time as the child's learning style and abilities are more carefully observed. Children are good strategizers. The very best visual processing strategies are those that the child chooses for himself. Take note of where the child places his book to read it. If it is not straight in front of him or is tilted at an angle, take this as a sign that he is having difficulty and leave the book where he places it. Very often, teachers and parents fret over what to do next. It is heartily recommended that you consult with the child. The child knows best what he is experiencing and can figure ways to modify the situation for himself. Offer him work with two sizes of print. Ask him which he prefers. Sometimes color plays a role in vision. Ask him if he likes his work on light blue or cream color paper. He needs help procuring supplies and the things that he thinks might work. That is where the adult comes in, helping him to modify his world so that he can deal effectively with it until you are able to get a thorough visual examination will pay big benefits immediately. When you find out exactly what the problem is, you will be better able to find an intervention that works. The golden rule of visual processing strategies. The universal rule for children exhibiting difficulties with visual processing disorders is to give them lots of breaks. Never allow them to become overly fatigued from visual tasks. Fatigue will bring them an immediate onslaught of oppositional behavior, and the fatigue has the potential of doing further damage to an already immature visual system. In some cases, the ability to stay visually focused can be as short as 2 minutes in younger children and up to 10 minutes or 15 minutes depending upon age and level of maturation. Carefully observe the time the child is able to stay focused and break things down into small chunks that they can complete in that amount of time. Do 2 math problems instead of 5. This is also a good idea when assigning homework. An excellent visual processing strategy is to have the child do something physical during his break, like walking around the room or going to the pencil sharpener. The physical activity will jumpstart their nervous system and they will be able to concentrate for another short period of time. Ever wonder why kids sharpen their pencils so much? They are giving themselves a time out from the visual task. Sensory motor problems benefit from short breaks also. Plan a project of meaningful activities for them to do during these very necessary breaks. Find their area of strength and emphasize that. If they have artistic talent, plan a mural. Every child has something that they do well. Find that strength and keep them busy doing it. Keep visual tasks to a minimum. Put their books on tape and let them listen to a book. The objective is to make learning pleasant and prevent damage to the child's self-concept. The damage to the psyche of learning handicapped children is immeasurable and can last a lifetime. Protect the child from failure. Visual figure processing is the ability to comprehend shapes, figures, and symbols. Hidden pictures and books such as Where's Waldo are often ways to address their difficulties. Mazes can be used to help with tracking issues. Encourage your student to progress to visually no fingers working the maze. This can be a challenge for anyone. Having a visual processing disorder is difficult, but with the right modification and support, it does not have to be debilitating. Conclusion. Unawareness brings uneasiness, a sense of being lost, and one has the tendency to focus on the negative side of the story. Furthermore, if we don't understand how a person functions, we can't help him. Why not bring more awareness of the different learning styles and use all our energy on positive matters by focusing our attention on somebody's strengths and uniqueness so they can fully develop in the person they really are. The universe is not going to see someone like you again in the entire history of creation. Barton Gregorian. Dyslexia has some disadvantages but also positive characteristics. Having a learning disability doesn't need to be a disadvantage. It's just a different learning style. Why not approach learning disabilities from their advantages instead of taking their disadvantages? For instance, dyslexia has a nice collection of strengths. There are many famous people with dyslexia like Albert Einstein, Thomas Edison, Walt Disney, Winston Churchill, George Patton, Jackie Stewart, etc. They are living proof that learning differences can be a serious advantage. Furthermore, those advantages are in demand in the information age, and this trend will grow further. To name a few, creativity being holistic, there is already a great demand for creative and problem-solving ability, and the demand will become even bigger in the future. We can provide humanity with all those important abilities who are already there. We only need to be nurturing them so they have the opportunity to shine and to serve humanity. In the year 2000, an illiterate person will not be someone who can't read or write, but someone who is not able to learn, unlearn, and learn again. Alvin Toffler. The environment, parents, and teachers can contribute to the happiness of the child with a learning difference by having more awareness and understanding of those learning differences. We would be better equipped to help. We could adjust the education methods to their learning style, nurture their abilities, and give the child our trust so it doesn't lose its self-confidence. Therefore, the child will be able to reach its potential, which is the highest goal of human development. It has been said of him, the boy may have been a misfit in school, but he was a born businessman. Much of his success is due to the fact that he is a non-linear thinker. Paul Orfalea, founder of Kindo's and famous dyslexic. One can alleviate the downside of the learning differences when adopting a suitable learning style and using the advantages of the learning difference. Plato believed that children are born with special talents and their training should stress those talents. His views are consistent with modern thinking about individual differences and education. Aristotle proposed methods for observing children. If one develops in a positive, supportive, and optimistic surrounding where one receives understanding and respect as an individual, it's more likely one will develop into a self-confident person. The person will be more focused on his strengths and success, no matter how small they are. They will give a positive energy and the possibility to accomplish more, even to tackle the disadvantage of the learning disability.